House Democrats say President Trump's top impeachment lawyer, Pat Cipollone, is a material fact witness ahead of the announcement. CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell spoke exclusively with 4 of the 7 Democratic House impeachment managers.
She asked Intel Committee Chairman Adam Schiff and Representative Val Demings, Zoe Lofgren, and Jason Crow how they plan to make their case for the president's removal and why they disagree with the White House's argument that abuse of power is not a crime. Take a listen.
The president of the United States has privileges and powers that no other person has. So the abuse of those very unique powers and privileges is exactly what the framers had in mind when they drafted the impeachment procedures.
Let me ask you about the question of witnesses. Presumably you would want to call John Bolton, but are you prepared then for who the Republicans want to call as witnesses? Would that be fair?
It would certainly be fair for the president and his team to be able to call witnesses that can provide material information on the charges. It would not be appropriate for the president to seek to call witnesses merely to try to perpetuate the same smear campaign that was foiled when his plot was discovered. Hunter Biden, for example, can't tell us anything about whether the president withheld military aid, whether he withheld that aid to coerce Ukraine to conduct political investigations, or why he wouldn't meet with the president of Ukraine. The only purpose in putting him on their list is they wish to trade material witnesses like Mr. Bolton and Mulvaney and others for immaterial ones that will allow them to continue to attack a political opponent. That's an illegitimate abuse of the trial, and the Chief Justice, who may have an opportunity to rule on materiality of witnesses, as well as the senators, should not permit that kind of abuse.
You can see more of Norah's exclusive conversation with the House impeachment managers tonight on CBSN at 10 p.m. Eastern. For more on this, let's bring in Michael Starr Hopkins in Washington. He's a Democratic strategist, and Joseph Pinion is here. He's a Republican strategist. Good to see you both. So let me begin with you, Michael, because you are in D.C. What do Democrats want to see from the House managers in the impeachment trial today? What are they looking for?
So Democrats are looking to make the case, but at the end of the day, all Democrats really want is transparency. Here, the president has blocked witnesses throughout the House's investigation, and Mitch McConnell has been complicit in his desire to make this a partisan spectacle rather than an investigation into what actually happened. You know, this is, at the end of the day, about whether or not we're going to protect our Constitution, and Republicans have a choice today. Either they're going to protect our Constitution, or they're going to decide that access and power is more important than anything else.
So, Michael, the House managers submitted their briefs laying out why the Senate should remove President Trump from office. Can you give us some of the details of just how the Democrats are going to be building their case? Because it's not just the case now. Now they're also going to have to argue in favor of witnesses and in favor of including the evidence that we've all already seen during the House investigation.
Absolutely. So the House is going to explain that the president is basically claiming absolute immunity. This power that the courts have already struck down and said is non-existent. You know, I'm a lawyer by trade, and so I know, yes, there is executive immunity. There's the ability of the president to block certain witnesses, but that's not the case here. Here, there's nothing that should stop Mr. Bolton, Mr. Mulvaney, Secretary Pompeo, all from testifying. The president could waive that immunity, but instead what he's doing is attempting to corrupt this investigation and block it. And so what Democrats are going to do is explain that at the end of the day, everyone should be held accountable.
Joseph, at the same time, the president's legal team submitted filings explaining why the president should be acquitted. The defense seems to be that it is within the president's authority to conduct foreign policy and to make phone calls with world leaders in the pursuit of strategic policy of the United States, or as the president has said and his supporters have said, to root out corruption. Even though corruption, if you just go by the partial transcript that was released, is never really mentioned. It's just Joe Biden and that server.
Look, I think for a lot of Americans, it is Groundhog Day. I feel like Punxsutawney Phil myself. Maybe we just drive the truck over the side of the cliff, because I think realistically a lot of this stuff has already been litigated and relitigated in the House, on TV, across kitchen tables. Realistically, a lot of Americans really have information overload. We've had it for a very long time. I think Republicans' point is that if they wanted to get these witnesses, if they wanted to get more information, then they should have gone to the courts. And I realize that might sound procedural, but it is also also rooted in the DNA of who we are as a nation, that when you have two branches of government disagree, that those two branches take their complaints, take their issues to the courts and let the courts decide. And I think, again, at the end of the day, Democrats can't avoid that they want to have their impeachment cake and eat it too. They want to say that they did not avail themselves of the court process because they don't have the time. At the same time, they want to act as if somehow the court was going to decide in their favor. We know unequivocally that is not necessarily going to be the case.
So, Joseph, what we received just before we started talking is this letter from Congress calling on Pat Cipollone, the president's attorney, who's going to be part of the impeachment process here, to disclose all firsthand facts and information, saying that he's a fact witness. I saw you sort of shake your head when we said that. What do you think this is?
Well, look, I mean, I think when people talk about muddying the waters, I think like to pretend that it's only happening on one side of the aisle. I think realistically, I mean, we have the Super Bowl coming up right now. There are more people who know who Adam Schiff is and what he looks like than either starting quarterback for both teams that are going to be playing. So I think the Democrats have overplayed their hand here. They've made it very much a show about who they are in an attempt to show strength for their base. And I think realistically, that's going to backfire with these swing voters across America, because at the end of the day, impeachment is a political process, and let's not pretend that we're on the verge of a presidential election.
Michael, sort of same question to you. How are we to take this? Pat Cipollone being a material witness, which I presume would make him ineligible to represent the president if he's sort of also a material witness in the impeachment. Is this just a distraction tactic?
No, I mean, I think there are legitimate questions about what Cipollone saw, what he heard, that go outside the purview of, privilege through an attorney. Cipollone's the counsel for the White House, not the counsel for the president. So there are certain privileges that he's not there for. I will say Republicans are getting ready to set a very dangerous precedent, because if Donald Trump is allowed to ask a foreign government to investigate a presidential rival, then there's nothing stopping Joe Biden or whoever is the next Democratic president from doing the same thing. And if we get into that, then there's no way for the American people to ever really have faith that our democratic process is fair and just.
As you know, Michael, last night Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell released proposed rules for the trial. How are Democrats, what are you hearing from your sources as to how they are responding to those rules, or how they feel about them?
Look, I regularly talk to people on the Hill, and both Democrats and some Republicans are really troubled by what Senator McConnell's doing. What he's doing is blatantly choosing politics over, the democratic process by saying that we're going to have 12-hour days starting at 1 p.m. going into the middle of the night. What he's doing is, in effect, saying that he wants to make sure the American people have no idea what's going on. And if there's nothing to hide, then let's be transparent. Let's do this in the middle of the day so people can see it and people can know what's going on and have faith that our democratic process is fair and just.
So I got to ask you to respond. The allegation is that he's trying to speed through this so it can be all wrapped up before the State of the Union, that starting it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and giving, the next 12 hours, giving rise to the possibility of the next 12 hours of arguments going till 1 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't want people to watch this.
I think you could actually make the argument to the opposite, that we know that the ratings are the highest in prime time in that evening, with the most coveted advertising spots being in the evening. So right now, I think McConnell's done more to anger advertisers than he has to anger Americans, because ultimately, right now, I think that most people have all the information that they're actually going to be able to take in. In my lifetime, there has not been a single president who has not been accused of abuse of power. Everyone from President Obama to George H.W. Bush to George W. Bush. And so, abuse of power often is in the eye of the beholder. I think, yes, there are extenuating circumstances here, which would lead some individuals to say there is a preponderance of smoke. But ultimately, through this entire process, over what has now been an extended impeachment trial or impeachment proceeding process, Democrats still have not produced a witness to actually place the smoking gun, the proverbial smoking gun, in the president's hand.
But that's
Democrats are
purely
going to be
because you guys
arguing
blocked
for.
it. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude and interrupt you, but it's very disingenuous to say that there's no fact-based witnesses here to go before the Congress, when in fact everyone who's tried to go before the Congress and be a fact-based witness has been blocked by the president himself. Republicans complain that Democrats sped this up through the House, and then Senator McConnell has sped this up in the Senate and made it so that this is a sham trial. You can't have it both ways.
Well, no, I think, though, to that point, though, Again, I would submit that, yes, I would like to hear from Mulvaney. I would like to hear from Pompeo. I would certainly like to hear from Rudy Giuliani. But it appears that I want to hear from them more than Democrats do, because Democrats have now availed themselves of the court proceedings. And I think, again, that is a political decision that they have made, and that is their right to make it. But again, they don't get to have it both ways. They don't get to say that we want the witnesses, but we're not actually going to go through the procedures that allow us to have them.
So let me just point out that we're in a working newsroom, and when sometimes we hear laughter from our producers from CBS This Morning in the background. So if our viewers we don't find this funny, but they're
talking about something else.
There's something else happening behind us here. But for both of you, before we wrap this up, I guess the question becomes: you're talking about these witnesses, and Joseph, there has been a talking point from Republicans, which is that we want to do this exactly the same way that we did the impeachment of President Bill Clinton. But we keep reminding our viewers that in that particular impeachment, the witnesses had actually appeared and testified before Congress many, many times. And there were some instances where senators recalled witnesses to testify in the Senate trial. In other words, these fact-based witnesses that you're talking about in the previous impeachment had actually given testimony, and there were still yet some senators who wanted to hear more even after all the testimony they gave in the House. We don't have that this time around.
Look, I think I would tend to agree with you that this is a much different process than what happened with President Clinton. But I also think that is in many ways also why Republicans are proceeding in the way that they have. Yes, we did have millions of dollars that were spent by Ken Starr in pursuit of Bill Clinton, and we started at Whitewater, and we ended up at I did not have sexual relations with that woman. So we went a long way, but we also went a long way with a Mueller report. There was 2 documents, hundreds and hundreds of pages, been printed in bookstores all across America. So the notion that there has not been an exhaustive work here, that Democrats don't have a robust amount of evidence to put forth to the American people to make the case. And I think that all the flailing that we see right now is because for a multitude of reasons, I think that whatever you want to think about the merits of impeachments, Democrats have failed to persecute the case in a manner that resonates with the people they needed to resonate with.
And Michael, real quick before we go.
I would just say over 60% of Americans want to hear from new witnesses. Over 50% of Americans believe that the president should not only be impeached, but removed from office. Facts are facts. I hope the Republicans will stand up for the Constitution.
All right, Michael and Joseph, always great to have both of you. Thank you very much for a spirited discussion.